Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to the presentation on a Sunday morning. My name's Josh Boaz. I'm Managing Director of Direct Agents. Co-presenting with me today is Dan Quintero, co-founder of AdStack. We're going to be talking about adapting email to the post-PC world. The agenda, first we're going to start off defining some terms, going through some statistics around mobile email, especially what we're seeing in terms of trends. Describe what the current state of the post-PC world is. Go through then some challenges and opportunities that we're seeing in just the mobile email marketplace. Go through some case studies of some actual examples that we've done together in terms of how marketers are adapting their email marketing campaigns for this new mobile marketplace, and then we'll end with some questions. So just quickly before we get into the meat of the presentation, just about us. So Direct Agents, we're a full-service digital direct response agency. We were founded in 2003. We've really specialized in performance-based marketing across all channels, mobile being one of them. We've been named one of the fastest growing companies by Crain's magazine this year. We were one of the top digital direct response agencies by Agency Business Report as well. We do a lot of business with AdStack in terms of technology. They're one of our top technology partners. I'll let Dan talk about his company.
So sure, what AdStack does is we essentially build technologies that help ensure that the email content you guys are sending is relevant for the user who's opening the email. It's engaging content for your content library, and it's also optimized for the viewing experience, so depending on what device the email is viewed on. And we do this by providing you guys with a platform that essentially allows you guys to indicate what emails should be shown to who, and it also optimizes those emails towards clicks or conversions, a combination of the two, or towards any other number of metrics you'd like to set. So we'll go over some of those platforms here. I'm sure a lot of you guys are using different ESPs, so we've intentionally built the platform to be sort of low needs from an integration perspective. Essentially, you're loading content into a web app, putting a couple lines of code into your email, and running your email as you normally would. And again, we work closely with Josh. Josh has a real good pulse on the market, so he talks to us a lot about what we should be building, and then we go and build those products for folks like you.
All right, so before we get into some statistics, just terms, so we're all on the same page of what we're talking about today. So in terms of email marketing, there's two real areas that we focus on and our clients use us for, and I think they are relevant for this presentation. So acquisition email, this is just using third-party email as a prospecting tool to acquire new customers, help generate leads, help generate sales. So really talking to new potential customers. Then there's CRM email. This is more remarketing efforts, talking to your existing customers through whatever remarketing efforts you have, newsletters, follow-up emails, etc. For mobile email, both of these are relevant. So whether you focus more on the acquisition side or you're more of your focus is remarketing, adapting those two areas to mobile email is important. And I think some of the tactics we're going to give you today can apply to both areas. So post-PC world, what is it? It's here, it's now. I mean, I think it started with the trend of more mobile devices being shipped than PCs. That happened this year. By next year, mobile will be the number one access point to the internet completely. So the way people are accessing the internet, the way people are communicating through the internet is fundamentally changed. So it's not a PC-centric world anymore, it's mobile. And what does mobile mean? Just so we understand, when we talk about mobile, it's the exact definition is a mobile computing platform, something with a graphical user interface, some kind of input, whether it's a keyboard input or more of a touchpad input. But it's not just smartphones. I mean, smartphones is what we think of when we hear mobile, but tablets is increasingly becoming a big factor in there. And what we'll go into in terms of statistics is the usage behavior is much different, and the purchasing behavior and everything between smartphones and tablets. So as a marketer, you need to keep both of those areas in mind and be cognizant of what's happening in mobile versus what's happening with smartphones and tablets. So just some statistics. Some of these stats you guys may have seen before, but I think it's pretty relevant for email marketers in general and for marketers that are trying to engage in the mobile marketplace. So just in terms of overall numbers, it's pretty staggering in terms of how quickly mobile has grown. In 2011, to 2012, the number of smartphones shipped grew by over 30%. So 660 million smartphones are supposed to be shipped this year. So that's a huge increase in the installed base of smartphones. Tablets, it's newer. It's only over the last 2 to 3 years, but it's growing faster. It's over 50% from 2011 to 2012. So over 100 million tablets are to be shipped this year. In terms of just market penetration, just in the U.S., over 40% of the U.S. adult population, and actually over 12, are now have smartphones, and that number is just going to grow faster and faster until it's closer to 100%. And I think what's another interesting trend is the generational shift. It's the adopters are younger. If everyone knows seeing a kid play with a tablet or picking up an iPhone and swiping around, and you just see how adept they are at using it. And as that generation grows and becomes age and becomes consumers, the usage behavior is going to change even faster. So as marketers, we need to be aware of that, and we need to start adapting your marketing methods to that sooner than later. So in terms of purchasing behavior, we have some stats on both smartphones and tablets, and it's pretty interesting, the differences here. So a smartphone, it is a vehicle for e-commerce. Over 70% of smartphone users have made a purchase in a given month, but the difference is that purchases tend to be smaller. It's partly the usage nature of smartphones. You're on the go. You're using it for information as you're going somewhere. You're checking your mail before you get on a train or do something else. So the purchases are smaller. It could be movie tickets. It could be media consumption is one of the larger items. So apps, other types of media. So we see that more than the majority of the purchases are under $20. And in terms of between the different areas, between tablets and PCs and smartphones have this lowest average order size. It's still, it's a growing area, and it's a huge opportunity for marketers, but you have to adapt your messaging and the types of products you're trying to sell users of smartphones to that usage behavior. To compare that with tablets, now tablets are much more e-commerce friendly. One is just the capabilities of tablets. It's easier to make a purchase from the bigger screen. But 80% of tablet users have made a purchase in a given month. And the average order size of tablets is actually the highest amongst desktop, even compared to desktop users. So the average ticket size that people are buying when they are buying, they're buying more frequently and they're buying more. So it's a huge opportunity for marketers, especially for the e-commerce perspective. And I think some of the reasons for that, not just the capabilities of the tablet, but just why people use tablets and how they use it. It's at home, people are using it as like a second screen. When they're watching TV, they have their tablet with them. It's replacing the laptop for many people. So people are more engaged and more apt and more ready to buy from using tablets. In terms of browser systems, in the U.S., Android is overtaking iOS. It's close. It's pretty close, but Android's growing faster. In terms of tablets, obviously iOS, the iPad is kind of the number one system right now. So as a marketer, these are things you just have to be aware of. Globally, Android is obviously it's a faster growing system. There are more Android enabled phones shipped and more tablets on the Android system being shipped worldwide. So depending on what your markets are, that's something you have to look at and adapt accordingly. So if you're more of an international marketer, you need to think about that. And in some of our case studies, we talk about adapting the messaging and adapting creatives accordingly. So if you haven't seen it yet, why mobile? What are the opportunities here? And especially for marketers. Right now, we see it. Mobile obviously is a huge opportunity. It's growing, and the growth rates are pretty high. But in terms of overall share of spend, mobile is still low. In terms of, for example, for e-commerce, overall e-commerce sales, mobile, both smartphones and tablets, only account for 3% of all e-commerce spend. So even though it's becoming the number one access point online, the primary way people are accessing the internet, it's still not catching up to desktops in terms of overall e-commerce dollars. It's 3% now. It's supposed to grow to 7% in the next 3 to 4 years. But still, that shows an opportunity for marketers. So there are users on mobile devices, on tablets, that are not being marketed to effectively. And it's up to all of us. How do we adapt our marketing to grow that share, to have that share of e-commerce dollars from mobile reach closer to what the actual consumption of mobile is? And I mean, if you just look at the consumption of media, I mean, mobile is consuming 60% of all media, but the spends are still not there. But that's something that I think can change quickly, especially as we as marketers adapt our marketing to it. So what's the opportunity with mobile email specifically? That's what we're here to talk about. In 2011, something close to 700 million people said they use mobile email. That's a number that's growing at a huge rate, 2.4 billion in 2016. And I think what's most impressive, as of this year in April, the total amount of email opens that came from mobile surpassed desktops and webmail. So for any type of marketer, especially any type of email marketer, that's an important number. I mean, if you're not currently adapting your campaigns to email, then you're missing out on a huge opportunity. And that's a growth rate. And if you just look at the total number of users, that's going to keep increasing, and it's going to go faster into next year. So it's going to have a fundamental change on the way your email marketing campaigns respond, how people react to them. So not only is the absolute number of mobile email users increasing, but the frequency of how they interact with email is increasing as well. So the stats that we have are something like 40%, over 40% of mobile email users are very active, meaning they check their email 4 to 5 times a day. I think probably in this room, or probably right now, people are checking their email. And so it's, I think that's a number that's going to just increase. And amongst certain types of users, that number is actually probably low. So people are checking more frequently. And what we're finding is mobile email has more of an impact on them. It's more effective. Over 50% of people have received a mobile email, so they actually opened an email on their phone or on their tablet and made a purchase from it. That's a pretty huge number. I think for users that typically are hard to reach, they're hard to get to make purchases of anything, where you have to hit them multiple times with different opportunities, different messaging. The fact that 50% of people have responded in some way to a mobile email, it's a big number, and that's an important number for marketers. And another interesting stat from this is something that we may not really realize on a regular basis, but text messaging. Almost 50%, 40-something% of people have said they've responded to a text message and actually made a purchase from that. And in one of our case studies, we're going to show you how we've kind of incorporated that into the mix. So just in terms of overall in time, I think we've established the stats. Mobile's growing. It's important. Mobile email. People are buying. They're checking their email more through their phones and through their tablets, and it's more effective. But as marketers, we're all looking at what's the next solution for mobile, right? You'll hear it a lot at any of the shows and in the trade magazines. How do we reach mobile? What's the solution? Is it display or these other options? But when you break it down and you look at what people are actually doing with their mobile devices, I mean, this is a chart you may have seen before, but if you break down all mobile time into 1 hour, 25 minutes of that hour is spent checking email. So that's the number one activity. It's almost 40% of your overall time is checking email. So as a marketer, if you're looking for that magic solution, how do I reach users through mobile? There's mobile email is right here, and it's now, and it's effective, and it's not so radically different from what you're doing. It's adapting some of your existing tactics and techniques, using some different technologies to better engage with these users. So from here, I think what we're going to do is just go into some of the challenges and opportunities that come from mobile. So we've seen that mobile email has impacted. There is an opportunity to it, that it can be more effective in terms of driving purchasers and being influential for your marketing program. But how do we deal with some of the issues that come from dealing in these different mediums? So things we're going to talk about: one, timing of emails. How do you adapt to users now that are not just checking their email when they're at work on the desktop, but maybe they're picking up their smartphones when they first wake up, while they're commuting, they get to work, they check it on a desktop, they go home, they're using their tablet while they're watching TV. How do you time your email campaigns for all these different types of usage behavior? And then two, how do you design your actual creative and marketing messages appropriately? What do you do to change that, and how do you do it? How do you make your email campaigns more effective? And then last, we're going to talk about just opportunities in general. What are some other things we can do to take advantage of the new technologies and new usage behavior for mobile? So now Dan's going to talk about some of these different areas and go into some case studies.
So before starting AdStack, I spent a lot of time in the daily deal space. And in that space, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out, this was a few years ago, just how to get to the top of the inbox. And it was actually very important at that time. You had to figure out, there were tons of daily deal sites. How do I get to the top? There was a very high correlation with when you sent the email and what the open rate was. To give you an example, in San Francisco, we saw if we sent an email at 6 a.m. instead of 8 a.m., we'd see a 30% higher open rate. In New York, we had to send at 4 a.m. to see that same type of increase. But again, the key was we had to get to the top of the inbox with all the clutter in order to get the opens. So the challenge today, sort of as Josh was shedding light to, is that people are opening their email all the time. In the mornings, during lunch, happy hours, meetings, presentations, conferences. So how do we adjust our activity for these new trends? And some more data on sort of smartphone usage and tablet usage. So the first thing everybody says when they see this chart, they say, I get it, Dan, you're trying to show me that in the morning, very early in the morning and very late in the evening, it's very important to pay attention to smartphones and tablets. That is a takeaway. I don't think it's actually the most important takeaway from this graph. The most important takeaway should be that at a minimum, you're seeing almost a quarter of your opens happen on tablets or smartphones throughout the entire day. So it's not something you can just pay attention to at one point in time, but throughout the entire day. So if time of day wasn't enough, you also have day of the week. So this may be a little bit more obvious, but the way you guys should be framing these slides and this data is not whether or not it's obvious to you, but whether or not you're actually acting on the data and doing things about it to make sure you're keeping up with these trends. So here during the week, what we're seeing is basically the desktop clients like Outlook and webmail clients such as Gmail, they sort of win in terms of proportion. On the weekends, we see a huge uptick in mobile and a pretty precipitous drop in sort of your Outlook email clients. So again, how do we think about this surge in mobile usage, this volatility during the week and throughout the day, and how do we use that to inform our new marketing strategies? So when you have a problem, you find a solution. So simple solutions are make sure you define your target audience, segment your list. You're going to find natural segments, natural buckets that your list and your customers fit into. I guarantee if you study these buckets, you're going to find different behavior patterns, different open rates, different conversion rates. You also should make sure you're looking at not just open rates, but click rates and conversion rates. One of the things that we see is while you see a rise in open rates at certain times, that may be offset by a decrease in click and conversion rates. So make sure you're optimizing your send times towards your end goal and not just for an open. But with new technologies, you can actually make sure that no matter when someone's opening an email, they're seeing the most relevant content. At AdStack, we've built a technology called fingerprinting, which allows us to not only serve different content into an email, but to know what that content was, even if it's on an iPhone or an Outlook, and to send that user through a flow that's unique to that piece of content. So you could essentially take your day parting strategies you use in graphical media, in real-time bidding, and you could now apply that to email using this fingerprinting technology. We just launched this a couple days ago with direct agents. So this was a feature that Josh and I had talked about a lot. And what you can essentially do is you could load up a promotion for the morning hours, the afternoon hours, and the evening hours. And when someone opened that email, it would populate the email with the correct content for that hour of the day. So you're serving time-sensitive content, but you're sending your email out still at once. You don't have to send 3 emails a day. You send 1 email. You use these strategies to get it to the top of the inbox. But if someone checks in the afternoon, the content may be different than the content when they open the email in the morning. So I know I'm showing this on a mobile device, and that was sort of unintentional, but it's a good lead into the next problem, which is how do we design the emails and what do we choose? Do we choose desktop or do we choose mobile? So we've talked a lot about how you can see upwards of 40% of opens happening on a mobile device, but to play devil's advocate, that also means that over 50% are happening on a desktop. So you clearly can't just ignore folks that are opening these emails on a desktop. So what do you do? It's a big problem. What we know about mobile opens is that if you don't optimize an email for a mobile device, you're going to see 60% drop off immediately. They're just going to exit the email, they're going to delete it. Only 3% of those people will ever come back. This means you have one chance to get mobile right. If you get it wrong, you're going to lose customers, which means you lose revenue. So what do? This is a problem one of our mutual clients had. The client is BloomSpot. They're a pretty large daily deal site. They focus on luxury travel experiences and just luxury experiences in general across their different markets. So the problem is their emails are very experiential. You can see that they're heavy on the visuals, and they count on that to create that sort of impulse buy decision you look for in the daily deal space. It's important. The problem was, as individuals were opening these on a mobile device, as you can see, they were seeing the top left corner of the email, and they were going to a landing page that was predominantly black, and they were going to a black screen. So not surprising after knowing this, that we're seeing a 75% lower click-through rate and an 80% lower conversion rate. The way they figured this out was they just saw decreasing engagement overall. And after they dug in, they were seeing that this decrease in engagement was coupled with an increase in mobile device opens. So looking at this, pretty obvious. So what is the solution? The solution is you can use fingerprinting to actually serve content into the web app and define what device that content is for. So you could load content in for a smartphone, for a tablet, for a desktop, and even different devices within each of those verticals, for an Android phone, for an iPhone, for a Kindle Fire, for an iPad. And what happens is, as an email is open, the decision engine starts running, it figures out what the open is happening on, and it serves in the correct content for that device. So the results for BloomSpot were pretty good, actually, I'd say. And you can see that essentially what we did was we just loaded up content that was specific to a smartphone, had them build a new landing page that went to a mobile optimized, basically it was a mobile optimized landing page. And just doing these small things. I mean, setting the campaign up in the web app took a couple of minutes. Now, of course, they had to have design resources that went in and created the new templates, the right sizes, the right landing pages. But as you can see here, this ended up yielding an actual increase in revenue per email, and a pretty large one at that, right? So the couple of hours they had to spend generating these new creatives was far offset by the increase in revenue per email. So these are a couple of the examples of some of the challenges we've seen and how we implemented new technologies to solve those. And then we'll talk about some opportunities that we've seen, particularly Josh has seen, and then how me and my team are building new products to help sort of create products for those opportunities.
Sure. So in terms of, we've talked about timing, changing the timing of your emails, to changing the design, but there's also opportunities that come just from the technology that your mobile devices have. So in terms of for lead generation, for example, the previous thinking is you send an email, you get an immediate response, you try to create awareness, you try to get someone to fill out a lead, to purchase something right away. With mobile, it doesn't always happen. Some people may scan their phone in the morning, they may think I'll come back to that later, or they're just on the move, or they're not thinking I'm going to open this email and go fill out a lead form. So for many of our lead generation clients, we had to change the thinking and try new things. So one is click to call. The old process is you collect the lead, and then you process the lead, you send it off to a call center. These people get called back at a later time. But now with the functionality, you can click the call right from the phone, try to reach a representative right away. Other things we've done is with using the calendar functionality. If you have someone that maybe they're interested in the service, but they're about to get in the subway. They just don't have the time right then and there to talk to your representative. We have some clients that are dealing with calendar invites. You enter your mobile number, so the lead collection is, instead of a whole lead form, have them enter just their mobile number, and then you get an SMS with a calendar invite for a later follow-back call. So by taking advantage of some of the native capabilities of the mobile devices, you can really kind of step outside the bounds. There's other functionality that people can use in terms of map feature. So drop a pin into the person's map. If it's a local retailer. So really, with mobile, even though there are challenges, there are opportunities. And I think the more innovative you are, the more creative, and the more you kind of really understand that consumer behavior, the more you can do for your clients. Now Dan will talk about another case study where we started using some pretty new technology, and especially with the SMS side.
So one of our other mutual clients is a company called DoYit. You guys may not have heard of them if you're on the East Coast. They just launched a beta in California. They were a merchant discovery website that is transitioning to being a mobile shopping, it's a geofencing mobile shopping application. So basically you indicate your interests, you indicate a radius that you'd like those interests to appear in. An instance of the apps runs on your phone, and when it finds some content on the internet that matches those interests, it'll push that data to your phone. So the problem was they had traditionally used a lot of the more conventional marketing methods, sort of your content marketing, your direct response email. So Josh and I had to figure out how to make these methods work for their new push for a larger mobile presence. And so we had to think about how to do that with a limited budget, how to make that budget as efficient as possible, and how to use that budget to do both driving visits to the website and also trying to expand their mobile reach. So what we did was we figured we could just use the fingerprinting technology to send desktop opens through a flow that would strongly encourage mobile application download. So what happened here is if the email was open on a desktop, they would go through a flow. The landing page would show them a new field to enter their phone number. The phone number field would pre-populate if they're logged into Facebook or some other social networking site where the number appeared. And it would send an SMS message to the phone with a link to download the app. Now, our main concern was that we thought no one was going to enter their phone number on the landing page, and we thought it wouldn't be able to be pre-filled in many instances. What we found was actually about 15% of the time when a desktop user got to that landing page, we could actually just pre-fill that information. And we found overall 13% of desktop opens converted to a mobile application download in the same session. Now, we were still collecting emails, so we have the ability to remarket to them and get those folks who didn't download immediately at a later date. So just one example of how we're trying to be not only reactive to challenges, but proactive to things we see in the client space and problems you guys may face in the future. So a couple of important things we wanted to make sure to just go over. The technology we've shown is really cool, but if you have cool technology and your content that you're pushing through that technology doesn't work, it's not going to be efficient. So just a couple of very simple things. Make sure you realize that these mobile opens, these people opening emails on mobile devices, they have a shorter attention span. Not that the person inherently has a shorter attention span, but they're doing things like sitting in conferences, listening to presentations, and going to lunches and getting coffee. So just make sure that you're converting text-heavy desktop emails to something that's more user-friendly. Have everything above the fold on the phone. Make sure you have a clear call to action. It's something simple, something someone can look at for a couple of seconds and realize they want to click on this. So here's one example that the team at Direct Agents put together for Allied, and another example they put together for Clincher. And you can see here that they've taken very text-heavy emails, sort of complicated emails that would work well on desktop, and converted those to work well on a mobile device. So I think my main takeaway is, we're seeing a lot of these trends. Everyone's using a mobile device. Email opens are happening much more often. And the takeaway is, even if you're not using a technology we've spoken about today, make sure you're doing something so that you don't fall behind the curve and end up like BloomSpot, where you're having to rush to get resources to mitigate some of the losses you're seeing with these new mobile opens. So specifically, you should be actually, at a minimum, you should be optimizing your send times. If you can, make sure the content that you're serving is relevant depending on the time of day and the day of the week. That'll help make sure you don't see huge drop-offs in engagement. In line with that, make sure that you're optimizing conversion flows and email content for a mobile device. It's especially important given how much activity we're seeing on mobile devices. And again, just be very proactive. Send me an email and say, Dan, the products you showed are great, but I need these dozen products, and if you create them, they'd be fantastic. So I'd love to go back to San Francisco on Monday and have a dozen new product ideas. I'm sure Josh would as well. And if these ideas are horrible, come tell me and tell me how we can make them better. Because again, what we're trying to do is just create products that are going to be useful for you guys. And if I think they're cool and you guys don't find them useful, it doesn't matter. So I'll pass it back over to Josh. I'm sure he has some takeaways as well.
Sure. And I think, in addition to the technology, I think it's also just as a marketer understanding that this shift to mobile, it's not just a technology thing. It's not just someone using a smaller screen. It's a change in user behavior. So we have, this is for a marketer, you have an opportunity to interact with consumers in a different way. I mean, mobile, it's personal, right? People are carrying it with them everywhere they go. They have their tablets with them all the time. So whereas, in the past where we could reach people on desktops when they were very task-oriented, they were doing different things. Now you have a very kind of intimate way of interacting with potential consumers. So I think you have to understand that, go through the data, understand what's happening, and specifically with your, with your clients or your campaigns, look at how things have shifted, and then work with ideally people like us to use new technologies to reach these people and to make your campaigns more effective. But I think it's a pretty fundamental shift. I think a year from now we could come back here and have a completely new presentation because it could be different. So you have to be adaptive and you have to really kind of see how things are changing right now and make them immediate moves, if you want to stay relevant, especially with mobile email. So I think, thanks for your time. We'll open it up to any questions now. All right, no questions.
Sure.
Yeah, my name is Angela England, and I have a new book that's coming out in December. It's my first print book. And one of the things that I wanted to do was have a mobile version of the site. And I didn't know, will that fingerprint technology that you're talking about automatically send someone who opens a mobile email to the mobile site, but the same links would work if they're on a desktop or a tablet and sent to a different version of the site? Is that what you're saying, that technology will automatically know?
Right. So the question was, will the technology be able to send different users based on device through a different conversion flow? And that's absolutely correct. So you could load up, 10 different devices with 10 different landing pages for each, and it'll take them through the correct flow depending on what device it's open.
So do you see a difference in, I'm in a rural area, so we don't always have like 4G, lightning fast, anything. Is there a difference in how the email open time or the load time for that email, is that significantly impacted, or is it happening quickly enough?
So in general, the longest load times we've seen for this switch in technology, the question was, are there longer load times associated with this fingerprinting technology? And we've seen that the load times are always lower, sort of incremental extra load times, always lower than 4 milliseconds. So it's not very long at all. Yeah.
Question. With the fingerprinting technology, I know you said when you open it, it can format it for mobile or PC. Like I check on my phone or a tablet, and then maybe in the evening I'm on a computer. Does it automatically?
Yeah, right. So the exact same email, it's one email. If you opened it in the morning on your iPhone, at work on your desktop, and at night on your tablet, that same email would be optimized in that same version of the email for those 3 devices. And it would go through a different conversion flow if you set it up to do so.
Okay, great. I think if you guys have any other questions, you want to just come up and talk to us, we'll be here for the next 10, 15 minutes. So thanks again. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, everybody.